I am the first speaker and moderator for this session, so thank you all for coming. Options to help them access funds that are available, other sorts of technical assistance to help communities of all levels manage the cost of environmental protection and activities that are related to that. And so the environmental finance centers work in a way that each covers an EPA region, which is what this slide right here shows you, the 10 EPA regions and how they're broken out. So there's actually three types of environmental finance centers. We have, the first type is considered regional multi-environmental media. So that means working within one EPA region, we cover air, water, and land, essentially. The second is regional, with water infrastructure with bipartisan infrastructure law. So these EFCs are focused specifically on helping communities access the bipartisan infrastructure law funding that is available through state revolving funds. We at the Environmental Finance Center at the University of Maryland are categorized as 1 and 2, so we do all of those things. And then the third type is a national water infrastructure EFC, which, as the name suggests, works nationwide. And we are part of several teams of national partners in category 3. And there's four of those. So basically what we do is largely focused on providing direct technical assistance to communities. We support communities to help them take concrete steps towards accessing all sorts of funding, including the infrastructure dollars, and coordinating and supporting effective delivery of technical assistance. We work in essentially 3 different categories: capacity building and training. We do a lot of local government leadership training. We have online and virtual training courses that people can take. We do collaborative training for different communities. We also have what's called MOST, the Municipal Online Stormwater Training Center, which is a suite of courses and videos and case stories that people can access to learn more about all aspects of stormwater management. We work in the realm of policy analysis and financial assessment. This can include policy review, funding and financing strategies for different things, budget analysis and program evaluation. And then lastly, community outreach and facilitation. So designing community outreach campaigns, facilitating stakeholder engagement. Natalia and I do an awful lot of that. Coordinating and conducting focus groups, managing community surveys and interviews and everything in between. Basically, if you have a need for it, we have someone who probably does it. So to touch a little bit specifically about the water infrastructure technical assistance, this is something that is just starting. We're just getting into this right now. Last fall, we were designated as a water infrastructure center for the Mid-Atlantic region. You can see there's actually 13 of these EFCs. Some regions have multiple centers in them, and that's because those centers are doing somewhat different things. So we cover all of Region 3, which is essentially the Mid-Atlantic. So we cover the district, Maryland, Virginia, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Delaware, everywhere in between. The EPA designated 13 of these structures across the country as part of the bipartisan infrastructure law, which, as you know, is the largest federal investment in water in the history of the country. And so a lot of work to be done there. This link here will take you to the EPA's website if you have more questions or want to read more about the water technical assistance. Whether we're talking about the water technical assistance or technical assistance in general, we function under 3 principles, essentially. The first is to provide direct technical assistance to communities. That's our whole role. That's what we do. And so what exactly does that mean? That means we are providing direct interactions with communities. We go into the communities, we work with the community leaders, we work with the residents of those communities by providing workshops, seminars, technical assistance to help those communities, most importantly, to meet them where they are. We need to have an understanding of what the needs are and where you are so that we can help you. In order to make progress toward meeting those goals that you have. The technical assistance services are informed by the technical, managerial, and financial constraints of whoever we're helping, right? Like it doesn't serve a community if we come in and say, this is what you need to do, but you don't have the capacity to do that. And so meeting you where you are is really important. We also strive to be culturally competent and engage the broader community. So being cognizant of the community sensitivities, helping the community build community trust and engage the community on the whole. Those of you that are in the room that maybe are town leaders or community leaders, you know, if you are trying to enact legislation or pass a ordinance or something like that, and your constituents, your residents don't understand it and don't support it, it's going to be a much harder climb for you. So we engage the community across the board. The second one, we support communities to take concrete steps towards accessing infrastructure funding. So as we're working with the communities, we stay focused on helping them build that path to apply for access and or implement the funding that's necessary to implement whatever the environmental needs are, whether it's stormwater infrastructure, wastewater infrastructure, or anything in between. And so this includes things related to the Clean Water Act, the Safe Drinking Water Act, the bipartisan infrastructure funding, and all sorts of sources, as well as the emerging contaminants in small and disadvantaged communities program. So to make sure that this happens, we take a stepwise approach, including collaborating with the EPA and the other programs that are necessary to identify communities that need assistance. Communities can also self-identify. We conduct initial community outreach and assess the community's water infrastructure needs, and then develop a technical assistance work plan for the community to help them along the path. And then lastly, coordinate and collaborate to support effective delivery of technical assistance. We recognize that there's a lot of moving parts to this process, and there's a lot of different technical assistance providers that are out there. And we really want to be a value add and not be duplicative. So we take a lot of steps to make sure that we're coordinating with other people who are working in communities and other technical assistance providers so that we're all helping each other, not fighting for everyone's time. Again, whether it's coordinating with EPA, coordinating with a different funder or a different technical assistance provider. Today, we've heard a lot about TICTAC, I think all week, a lot about TICTAC and some of the other things that are happening. We're also parts of those programs as well. And I think most importantly, we want to support community-centered solutions. We want the whole community to be engaged in the process and supportive of the process, and help people lead by example. So what exactly does this look like? This infographic shows a lot of the technical assistance services that are provided by the Environmental Finance Center, as well as some of our partners, specifically as it relates to the infrastructure funding. So we can help communities with planning and assessment, whether it's community engagement, plan development and coordination, studies and assessments. We do asset management, project development, everything from engineering reports to helping projects go in the ground, environmental reviews, project design. We can provide assistance with partnerships and engagement, ongoing engagement and outreach, new engagement and outreach. We do a lot of decision maker education, which I think Jackie may speak about that when she comes up. We also help form partnerships between communities and other organizations that maybe can help them better than we can ourselves. And capacity building and training. On the funding and financing side, we can help with rates and revenues analysis, financial planning. We do a lot of identification of funding opportunities and helping communities prepare applications. And then also program management, bid support, project inspection, and things like that. So if we don't cover it, we have a partner who does cover it.
Can I just ask, how much of that's a lot of services, and there are a lot of many small community organizations that don't have grant writers, they don't even have an administrative assistant. How much of that big chart do you do? Or do you outline them what the process is and then they find somebody else?
So it depends on the situation, right? And so we do a lot of this. We also have partners that do this. This slide was developed specifically related to the infrastructure funding. And so through that Category 2 designation that we have money to do this for communities. So if your community comes to us and you identify lead service line mapping and replacement as a need, we have money to provide technical assistance to help your community write that application, make sure it gets supported, submitted to the SRF program in your state, and help you through that process. In other instances, sometimes when we work with communities, and we'll talk about this a little bit more when we're talking about some of our community examples, we partner with communities to be written into grant applications to help them. And so it really depends on what pot of funding that we are talking about. The Finance Center itself is 100% soft funded. So we have to have grant funding to do all of our work. We're housed at this fine institution, but we do not get any money from them. So everything that we do has to be funded through some sort of funding situation, just like everybody else sitting in this room, right? And so we have some pots of money that allow us to just provide that technical assistance. We have other instances where we work with the community to be written into a grant to help them with things. And then we also have situations where, for example, Prince George's County, we have a master service agreement with them, so they pay us to do outreach for them on specific things or to lead certain programming for them. So the answer really depends on what the situation is. Is that helpful? But ultimately, the end result is we want more communities with access to federal, state, and local funding and the capacity to fund and finance quality projects and reliable services for the communities and the constituents. So our specific Region 3 water technical assistance goals are to provide direct technical assistance to communities, to support communities to take steps toward accessing water infrastructure funding. So again, that is things specifically related to clean water, drinking water, issues related to lead and emergent contaminants, to coordinate and collaborate to support effective delivery of the technical assistance. In other words, if we aren't the right fit, we're going to connect the community with our partner who is, and then they will pick up the role of technical assistance. I think this one's really important for this infrastructure funding in particular. We are prioritizing underserved communities. They could be urban, they could be rural, it doesn't matter, anywhere in Region 3, with a goal of 40% of them being Justice 40 communities. We have the goal of annually providing 10 deep dive and 30 to 50 light touch technical assistance opportunities specific to the infrastructure funding. That's aside from what we do in our normal everyday lives. The logos at the bottom, those are the people, the entities that are partners with us on this Build Infrastructure Category 2 EFC. So we're working with the Water Center at the University of Pennsylvania, West Virginia Community Action Partnership, Moonshot Mission, CERCAP, Quantified Ventures, RCAP, and then also the School of Public Health Siege here. And so as you can see, some of those are very specific, right? The Water Center at the University of Pennsylvania, they're helping us in Pennsylvania. Others like Moonshot Missions are helping us across the region. So how people can reach us, specific to this infrastructure technical assistance, the water technical assistance, the EPA has an intake form on their website that a community can fill out. It asks you, this needs to be a community, not like a nonprofit or something like that. So the town or the county or the borough would have to submit it. Or the utility themselves. And then we also have an intake form on our website. Some communities are being referred to us by the state. So the states are really helping us to identify communities that could use technical assistance related to drinking water, wastewater, and lead issues, but maybe don't know that this technical assistance is available to them. And then people can email us directly as well. And then there's a QR code there. There's some links that'll help get you to the right place. And that's where I'm going to pause. Do we have any comments or questions that have come in online at this point? No. Okay. Any questions in the room? Yes.
Are there any restrictions as to the type of communities that can request technical assistance? Like demographically or economically?
No, so for our general everyday work as a Category 1 EFC, the answer is no. Anybody who wants to contact us can contact us. We work with all sorts of communities. We're going to be giving some examples of them. And the answer is no to that, because even communities that do have capacity or do have money, maybe don't have the technical knowledge or things like that. So we work with all sorts of communities. For related specifically to the Category 2 infrastructure, the water technical assistance, anyone can apply for technical assistance. We are prioritizing those underserved communities. So anyone can apply, but as we get further down the pipeline, it may be harder for one of those communities that's not economically disadvantaged to get the technical assistance, because priority will go to those that don't have access to the right things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for example, I live in a community where probably 60% of the population are not underserved, but 40% are.
Right. So the way that underserved is being defined depends on the state. So each state within their state revolving fund guidelines sets what they mean by disadvantage. And so it is possible that a community is categorized or meets the state's definition of disadvantage, even if there's a sector of the population that is clearly not disadvantaged. You know, it all comes down to how the state is defining it. And that comes into play because when you submit an application to the state revolving fund to get access to these dollars, you are given preference, like underserved communities are often given preference in the state system, and so that's why that is coming into play. So you really have to, and that's part of what we do, is help a community figure out if they meet that disadvantage criteria from the state or not. And so like, for example, I'm the state lead for Maryland. Maryland has set what their disadvantage criteria is, but Maryland is also referring communities to us for technical assistance that may not meet that disadvantage criteria, but have a score of 75%. They meet the 75% requirement on, or the categorization in the EJ screen. And so Maryland's using two separate things to refer communities to us, and it's possible that you meet one, but you don't meet the other. So there's a lot of, moving pieces and parts.
So if we have a question about whether we are eligible, we should contact you.
Anyone's eligible. It's just, it's gonna eventually, because we have this requirement to meet 40% underserved communities, right? Eventually, we may reach a point where we can only help underserved communities, if that makes sense. Because the EPA has set goals and guidelines that we have to meet because of the funding. But yes, if you have questions, just reach out to us and we can help you figure that out. Also, a community does not need to be underserved to apply to the state revolving fund, right? So any community or system can apply for state dollars. It just is, there's point differentials and things like that with the different states that help you in certain cases. But anyone can apply.
Okay,
Yes.
Thank you.
Sure.
Who do y'all work with in Virginia? And do y'all have a Virginia lead person out of EFC?
Yes, the Virginia lead out of ESC, her name's Kelsey Brooks. Natalia and I are both also on the Virginia team as well.
Okay. And then do you all work with DEQ?
Yes, so in Virginia, we are working with DEQ. DEQ is referring communities to us.
Good.
We're also working with Department of Health to get community referrals, but communities can also self-identify by either emailing us or completing the intake form. But we've had a lot of conversations with all the branches of DEQ. Yeah.
And are you all currently doing some work with communities in Virginia?
We're going to talk about some of our state examples. We have some work in Virginia. We don't have any current work in Virginia, but we have recently completed some work.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right. Yes. Over here.
I'm assuming that you have partners in Washington, D.C.
Washington, D.C. So for the infrastructure dollars or just in general?
Both.
So in general, yes. The infrastructure dollars in the district are completely different because the district is its own governing entity, right? And so in the District of Columbia, essentially all of the infrastructure dollars related to, they all go to DC Water, basically. So they either go to DC Water or they are, the way the infrastructure dollars are handled in the district for things that aren't through DC Water is through a grant program. And so they use those infrastructure dollars to fund grant programs that people apply to do projects. And so the district is different in the sense of they don't have communities that are applying for their state revolving fund. That's not how it works in the district. So like Petworth can't apply to the district for state revolving fund dollars to do a rain garden. They write a grant proposal. So the district is just set up differently, if that makes sense.
Who's in charge of D.C.? Is there a particular person who you reach out to? D.C. is a mess. D.C. is a mess.
I am the state lead for.
This is the first time okay.
I am the state lead for.
This is the first time I've heard of you. D.C. is almost, the whole state is almost a brownfield. So, I mean, like, how are we not, how long you been in existence?
The Environmental Finance Center, over 30 years.
30 years.
The District of Columbia handles, because they are their own governing body, right? Like in the state of Maryland or Virginia or wherever, there's your local reports to your state, which then reports to the EPA. That middle ground is not there with the district. It's the district and then it's the EPA, right? And so because also the district does not have townships or boroughs or municipalities the way that the states do, their money is handled much differently, which is why in terms of drinking water and wastewater, DC Water handles everything for the district, and then the other pot of money the district doles out in grants. And so it's just a much different setup. So our technical assistance process with the district is going to look very different because they don't have communities applying for funding. We're actually meeting about that next week.
Well, we don't know nothing about you. So that may be a good reason, and the government is not publicizing it, so we don't know anything about you. But DC is basically a brownfield.
I live in DC. I'm very well aware, yes. It's just the district is a very different process and they tend to handle things internally, and that is not something that we can necessarily change. Yes.
Okay. My name is Sean Moore. I work for DC Water.
So you get a lot of you are the direct recipient of the infrastructure dollars related to that because DC Water handles all of that for the district. That's just the way it is.
A large chunk of that is going into our Levy DC program.
Right.
So we're replacing the water service lines, and we're also making some major infrastructure improvements in terms of flooding.
Right. So whereas in the States, you have individual municipalities or counties or whatever that are handling those types of issues, DC Water handles all of them for the district, which is why all of the money goes to you. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Okay, a little further afield, what about Region 7 or Region 6 for EPA? Is there an equivalent for what happened to what?
Yes. So for the infrastructure dollars, Region 6 and Region 7 are handled out of the University of New Mexico and Wichita State for specific to infrastructure dollars. They're also both still Category 1, 2, I believe.
And we have really close ties with them, so if you need help connecting with either of those offices, reach out
Yeah,
to
if you
us.
catch up with us afterwards, we can give you
We can-
contact information for those regions. Okay, so then I'm gonna turn it over to Natalia to talk about some other funding sources that are available.
Can everyone hear me if I talk this loud? Okay. So we are the Finance Center. We are going to talk about funding opportunities, but to talk about every single funding opportunity, I would be up here, for hours, especially considering the amount of money that we know is being thrown into some of these federal programs. So I'm going to give a brief overview, and then I'm happy to help answer questions as we go through. So I know one of the big things that we have been talking about this morning and throughout the symposium overall is all the federal money going into two different programs. There's the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law or Bill program, and then there's the Inflation Reduction Act. So the bill, Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, it's also known as the Infrastructure Investments and Jobs Act. So if you hear that, it's interchangeable. And as Michelle already mentioned, it's the single greatest investment in water infrastructure in our nation's history. There's $55 billion just going towards water infrastructure through that program. One thing that Michelle touched on as well is that program is, the money is being doled out in several different ways, right? So a lot of money is going through the existing state revolving loan program, specifically that water infrastructure dollars funding. And one thing that has been recognized is it's not the easiest funding process to get through, to apply, and to successfully get money out of it. So again, we're here to kind of help play the helping put together really competitive applications piece. The the I cannot speak today, I'm so sorry. The Inflation Reduction Act was passed in 2022. And that law aims to curb inflation by reducing the federal government budget deficit. And it does things as well as having programs for lowering prescription drug prices, investing into clean domestic energy production, and promoting clean energy. So there are several funding programs that fall under these. Some of them are listed here. It is not an exhaustive list. The first website that's listed on here does give you the full list of programs funded through both bill and through the Inflation Reduction Act. Also provided on the second link here is the guidebook. And this guidebook provides descriptions of all the different incentives, the funding programs, and it goes through program by program, the background on each program's purpose, eligibility requirements, period of availability, and other key details. I will warn you, it is several hundred pages long, which is why we're here to help you kind of navigate what that means and where the best pot of funding is for the type of project that you're trying to get done. And then another thing worth pointing out is that while this is federal dollars, it's being spent down by the state. So different state agencies are in charge of different parts of it. So in Maryland, there's the Solar for All program that's being run by MCEC. The Maryland Energy Administration is also doing a bunch of things. So part of it is just trying to navigate the infrastructure, the pathways down through which the funding is coming through.
So getting back to Michelle's presentation, it's important for you to do an assessment
Correct.
in order for you to be able to advise
Which pot of money
which
is,
kind of money.
yes. So the very first thing we do if a community contacts us is a needs assessment, right? Or like, for lack of a better term, I'm going to say an interview, understanding what are your top priorities, because we understand you may have many. So what are your top priorities, and helping to kind of identify the potential different sources and what's the best fit for you in your current situation.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
So let me just furthermore, therefore, you all would come into, say, Virginia, to a community if we found somebody that needed.
Yeah, so we definitely have travel money. We would
Okay.
start with a phone call with all the decision makers, whoever
Sure.
needs to be in the room,
Sure.
understanding. We want to make the most efficient use of our time. So if we have to bring our partners, we want to understand what the local context is, identify if it's not us. We're happy to help manage and oversee all of our partners, but like if it's not us, who should we pass you off to? And then how can we check in over time to make sure progress is being made towards the work plan we put together?
Right, yeah, because we're working with starting to work with several communities, looking at critical infrastructure, including, what are the risks they're facing with climate change, basically, because we're in the climate change
Yeah.
arena. So, but part of what we will do further along is to point them in direction of funding. And you all are already doing all this, like, we do not have to reinvent this wheel here, because
Correct.
we can invite you to come in and talk.
Yes, and I will say in terms of Virginia and any other state that's in the room that is not Maryland, we appreciate connections.
Good.
That's part of the reason we're working so closely with DEQ is because we recognize the fact that, and look, I worked in Virginia for 20 years, like I have a lot of Virginia experience, but unless it's a
Okay.
community that I've worked with before,
Yeah.
people are like, University of Maryland, why
Right.
does Maryland
Well,
care about Virginia?
There is a disconnect there, which I've
Absolutely.
always seen, so I'm,
We
again,
see
so
it as
happy
well.
in some DC to hear more
Yes, and
what y'all can do, willing to do, what you have travel money to do, because I always kind of see you all doing things in Maryland. It's like, wait,
and
what happened to Virginia?
And a lot of it is word of mouth referrals. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
Yes,
okay,
and
well,
we
we will be back in touch with you,
recognize-
yeah.
we appreciate that. We
Yeah.
recognize the challenge of walking into a state that is not Maryland,
Right.
trying to get them
Right.
to understand.
Right.
We work throughout the Mid-Atlantic, and we have,
Yeah.
so for example, we have people who live in Delaware, that work in Delaware,
Okay.
but they're still part of the University of Maryland Environmental
Right.
Climate Center. And so
Right.
we recognize the challenge of the name as well, and welcome
Yeah.
connections and referrals and things like that, because that is how we get a lot of our work, is through word of mouth, which is why these fine folks are also here today.
And so that's money that goes basically to localities, is that right? And then, as in.
So it depends on,
Opposed to NGOs.
so when it comes to water infrastructure, that's going directly to the states, so you have to apply through whatever state program is.
Okay.
Like an NGO could not get the infrastructure dollars, you are correct, yes.
There was a question over here.
So hi, I'm Robin Lewis with Interfaith Power and Light DMP. So I work with churches. In particular, I work with various interfaith, but my focus is on the Black church. So if I'm hearing you correctly, and I came a little late, apologies.
That's okay.
If I'm hearing you correctly, if I had congregations that wanted to do something environmental, solar, energy efficiency, whatever, I would reach out. I could reach out for them to you and connect you
We would set up,
with setting up the meetings to discuss with them how they would go about doing it. Do they have a fiscal agent? And do they have to have a fiscal agent for these funds?
so,
It depends on the fund.
correct, so
Right.
it depends on the entity, so if we're gonna go after grant funding, do they have the right designation to be able to be the direct applicant? Do they need someone
Or
to
do they need
file?
a fiscal, right? do they-
Exactly, so
exactly.
it's a case by case basis, but that would be part of that initial discussion, is
Okay.
understanding what the local wants and needs are and what the infrastructure is in place so that we can work with it.
So do you come out, like you said, you come out, do you come out and do presentations? Because I work with Green the Church DMV, so we do presentations, workshops, and just explaining what your organization
Absolutely.
would do, because the assumption is they would write the grant, but you would help. Is that correct? Or you
Yeah,
write the-
so,
I mean.
again, it depends on what
the churches aren't necessarily grant writers.
correct,
We
so.
do a lot of ghostwriting.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, yeah. They're
So
gonna
we
ask
would
that,
not
right.
apply, but we would be happy to help put together, the
The package, right, I mean, because that's what's needed.
absolutely.
I
And we
don't-
recognize
yes,
that,
yeah.
for
So
sure.
I'd love to connect with you all because I kind of am acting as a hub.
And one of the conversations that was had before lunch in the session I was in is, it's so much more, it's a more efficient use of funds if the church can be the direct applicant, because the overhead rates at the university, it's just a more efficient use of money overall. So we would be open to having all of those conversations. And yes, we will go around and give presentations and talk about different opportunities, if as needed. I'm going to Eagle Harbor this evening to talk about septic system. So just depending on what the local, needs are, we can definitely arrange to have presentations and go out and about.
Okay. I got you.
Great
now.
question.
Our
Our contact information's on the last slide too. so
Okay.
Don't worry. There was another question, I'm sorry.
Yes, I know that you told the gentleman that Maryland is, your colleague told the gentleman, sorry, I'm shaking it down with me, they're just a company here in the area.
Okay.
But I love, taking care of, being a good neighbor, right?
Mhm.
A good citizen, whatever, how you say. But you told the gentleman that Maryland is like a 70 or 75, so you look for like 40%, but I think about those as you go further up, like 270, and you get more into the more rural areas where the needs are different, than the DC metro area. I remember teaching at a high school, and every time, often I would walk down the halls and then I couldn't breathe. And I knew it was something in the ducts, or because my mom has a sensitivity to the dust, and every time she came to my house, she couldn't breathe. Right? But the point is, I was just thinking about just the impact on those communities that are not within that window. Of so many rural areas in Maryland. How do you address those issues facing, even if they are supposed to have more, they don't. I had very poor children, and I was in Montgomery County, but it was on the outskirts, and so how do we still help those individuals? And it was a school, and I don't think they ever, and that was almost 20 years ago, and I still don't think they ever went in to try to fix anything.
So that score of 75 that I was referring to is specific to, that is one of the criteria that MDE is using to refer communities to us specifically for the wastewater, drinking water infrastructure dollars. That's a criteria specific to that. It has nothing to do with anything else that we do other than that specific pot of money. So that's just to clarify that. And so we, in terms of the situations you're talking about, we work with anybody, right? We just have specific binding guidelines for this specific pot of infrastructure money, if that makes sense.
Okay, just that wastewater. just
Drinking
that.
water, wastewater, lead, line, that's just one of the criteria that Maryland is using to refer communities to us.
You know Montgomery County may have money, but I was never drink out of that spigot. You know, and I mean, I could have.
I
no-
grew up in Montgomery County too, and my middle school had a mold problem, and I had 2 teachers that had to quit teaching in the middle of the year because of the mold
Wow.
problem, and that's Montgomery County. So I hear you. School systems are difficult, you have to work within the county system. That's not to say that we haven't worked with schools before. So one of mine and Michelle's challenges when we first get referred to a community or when we first start working with somebody is understanding kind of the partnership piece, everyone who needs to be in the room, because
Yes.
the decision makers ultimately need, you know, to be part of the conversation, and how do we facilitate those conversations amongst different organizations and
Great.
groups.
Thank you.
So,
These are great questions.
so the only real restriction is that the entity has to exist within Region 3 of the EPA.
To have a
To
scoping call.
work with you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's it. And then it would be figuring out the details from that point on,
Okay.
So,
unless it's the water industry.
so you said we just need to call you and then you'll figure out.
Yeah, so our emails will be at the end, and I have a few business cards, so either of those.
But you're saying you're also identifying funding that can go to NGOs.
Oh, absolutely,
Oh,
yes.
okay.
We work with
Predominantly, that's what.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, good.
We work in the NGO space, we're self-funded, so we understand the landscape and the partnerships that need to be built.
Yeah, and I think it gets confusing because we have 2 separate realms of technical assistance we're talking about. We're talking about the things that we do in our everyday, day-to-day,
30 years.
30 years worth of EFC world, which is we work with anyone, anywhere. And then we have this very specific category of infrastructure dollars for drinking water, wastewater, and lead, you know, associated things. That has some restrictions attached to you. But anybody in Region 3 can send us an email or call us and say like, hey, we're interested in talking about this. I had a conversation yesterday with the river keeper at Shore Rivers about some stuff that they want to do. So like, anybody can call us and talk to us about opportunities or issues. It may be that we have an existing pot of money that we can help you through. It may be a case where we say, hey, we could partner on a grant to do this, or we can refer you to someone else to do this. So as Natalia said, it really is a case-by-case conversation. The only restrictions come
From that.
with that
Yeah.
infrastructure dollar.
Yes. Was there another question? Yes.
I just wanted to say that I work for Siege, so I'm involved in the Tic Tac, the thriving communities. And a big part of the Tic Tac, which is $12 million that was just received by the National Wildlife Federation and the University of Maryland, is finding people to give the money to.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, Dr. Wilson and his colleagues have been very successful at helping the EPA restructure these requests for proposals. But whereas in the past, money used to just trickle out of the spigot, now the water is knocking people down. And so a big part of the grant funding that has been received requires the National Wildlife Federation, the Environmental Finance Center, Siege, to give the money away to find under-resourced communities, and especially environmental injustice burdened communities that have not had access to the money in the past. And so you see at the top, the mini grants, that's $20,000. That's money that's come through the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. Dr. Wilson received $2 million. He has to give $1 million away in 2 years. You know, so this symposium really, hopefully, will make you aware so that you can make your networks aware to ask for this technical assistance so you can get money where money has not traditionally gone.
Does that apply to DC as well?
That applies to DC also. In fact, Empower DC is one of the hubs of both the Mid-Atlantic Climate Action Hub and the Thriving Communities Technical Assistance Center at the EPA. So yes, I mean, communicate with Parisa or Dr. Janet Phoenix, and they can give you information.
So I'm looking at the time. I really, really appreciate the dialogue. I'm going to power through because we do have community representatives here who are going to talk about how they have partnered with us and their experiences and may have some lessons learned. So I do just want to power through, but there's still plenty of time. I'm going to keep going here. So I am not, so grants, funding, and technical assistance. We've already talked about most of this. I'm not going to talk about match or tic-tac. There were 2 sessions this morning on it, and already talked about it a bit. So in addition to, for our role as a finance center, in addition to knowing, you know, kind of where all that federal money is going to and how to tap into it, we also keep our eyes open for individual foundations and things like that, and how you can access those monies. One of those is called FREE, Frontline Resources Institute. And they support frontline communities working to advance environmental justice and climate justice by providing the resources and technical assistance to build a world where we can all achieve healthy, safe, and sustainable environments. They just had their first round of funding, but it is a new organization giving out funding. And things that they've funded this past year included everything from working on issues from pesticide reform to food sovereignty. So again, this is just to say we have our eyes out there to see different available opportunities and different pots of money to tie you into. I do want to point out there are environmental justice grants through the EPA. The link takes you to a hub that shows you all the previous requests for proposals and then what's been funded in each state through those programs. And then you can also sign up for the EPA grants update listserv. So anytime that there's a new funding opportunity that's dropped or that they change the guidelines and regulations around different funding opportunities that exist, you can be on the listserv to be the first to know. One of our big funders, like I said, we're self-funded, and one of the big partners that we point our communities to is the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. They are national, but they have, they work watershed wide. So if you are in the Chesapeake Bay watershed, they have the Bay Stewardship Fund. If you're in the Delaware River, if you're up in Pennsylvania and out that way, they have the Delaware River Program, and then they also have specific programs for urban waters. So I'm not going to go into too much detail. Again, there's a lot of grant funding available to you. Another thing that we do is, there's a lot of grants, but there's also different loan programs, low interest loan programs. So helping communities understand pros and cons of each. Obviously people want grants, you don't have to pay it back, but that's not always feasible. So what are the different loan programs? What are the implications long term for going to some of these loan programs and things like that? So another big program we refer people to are the CDBG, the Community Development Block Grants. Again, I apologize, I'm going through it pretty quick. And this has been touched on already, so again, I'll be quick. A lot of the money is either trickling through the states or is state funding, so understanding the different parameters and the different organizations at the state level to navigate to access funds as well. So any questions about fund? I know I went through that quick. I just to be respectful of people's times. I'm gonna give a couple just high-level examples of projects that we've done throughout Region 3. And then we're gonna talk about 2 projects specifically, and then we're gonna have our great community partners speak. So in Maryland, we have the Sustainable Maryland program that is a municipal certification program. So same way a building, for example, could be LEED certified, a municipal entity can be certified by doing a number of different things. In the state of Maryland, it's been around over 10 years. It's probably the most well-known flagship program of the Environmental Finance Center. An example of us working one-on-one with a more rural community in Maryland would be Emmitsburg. They just got permitted recently for stormwater regulations, so they know that they have to put projects in to treat stormwater. They don't 100% know, they didn't 100% know. They had a good understanding of the projects they wanted to put in, but they didn't know how to finance that long term. So there's the money to get projects in the ground, and then there's the project money that you need to maintain projects over time so that they keep working as designed. So we looked into a feasibility study for them, and they decided to pass a stormwater fee, which is very common in Maryland. In West Virginia, we featured the city of Berkeley. They have a very, very innovative kind of greenscapes committee, and they have a lot of green infrastructure in a very small town, and it's very impressive. So we featured them in one of those online courses that we talked about. We also helped do training with them in the Eastern Panhandle region to understand, to kind of do a map crosswalk and understand how we can integrate their water quality goals with some hazard mitigation in a very flood-prone area. So those are other types of work that we've done. In Delaware, we helped them stand up a tree steward program. As you guys likely know, there's a goal to plant so many trees across the watershed in a very short amount of time. So there's a bunch of programs kicking off to identify where to put those trees. And I'm actually going to turn it over to Michelle to talk about Virginia and Pennsylvania, since those were her projects. But I just wanted to give you an idea of the different types of work that we have done throughout the watershed.
All right, so in Virginia, to get back to Virginia, we recently wrapped a project with the Elizabeth River. The Elizabeth River Project is the name of the NGO. They have a watershed action plan that they do every couple years for the Elizabeth River and the rehab associated with it. So we did a project with them to help them identify new and unique funding and financing opportunities to fuel all of the projects that need to happen. We also worked with them to identify new partnerships that they hadn't potentially looked at before. We also did something called Seeking Stormwater Solutions cohort learning that was with a bunch of small towns, mostly in Northern Virginia, and then down into the more rural parts of the James, where we brought community leaders together to teach them about stormwater and have them really have that peer-to-peer conversation about these are the stormwater issues that our towns are suffering from and how they're dealing with them, so they could learn from each other. In Pennsylvania, I'm working with Franklin County Conservation District. They're trying to actually stand up a new NGO that will help them fill the gap that the Conservation District can't provide for some of their constituents, things like helping farmers pay for the permit fees that are associated with applying for a grant, which is money that if your grant's not funded, you don't get back. So helping subsidize some of those costs and taking in sources of money that the Conservation District can't take in, specifically private money, because the Conservation District can't take corporate sponsorship or private money. And then similar to Virginia, we did some MS4 stormwater financing and outreach in the state of Pennsylvania as well. So just to give you an idea of like some of the things we've done and the different types of things we've done throughout Region 3. I want to talk specifically about a project that we have going on now. It's called the Walkable Watershed Project. This project is happening here in Maryland. We are partnering with the port towns, which are Bladensburg, Cottage City, Colmar Manor, and Edmonston. The Walkable Watershed Project is a community-based green infrastructure planning tool. There's nothing
unique or new or novel about this concept, other than the fact that it really takes to heart community engagement and input. I think as practitioners, we all have a tendency to seek community input, but then not necessarily incorporate community input. And I say that having sat on both sides of that table, it's a problem. And so the walkable watershed concept considers connectivity, watershed health, ecological stewardship at a community-wide scale. It supports the needs and goals such as improved connectivity and access, safe routes, open space, outdoor amenities, while addressing flooding and resilience, and in the context of revitalization planning, which I think is really important these days, particularly when we're talking about things related to water. We are always applying a climate lens, and there's no way that you cannot do that in the current landscape. And so basically it combines innovative planning with community capacity, resulting in cohesive strategies to guide efforts to improve the watershed and community health, to strengthen local infrastructure. And this last one is really important to me, leverage investment. How do we leverage what we are already doing and the money and activities that we already have happening? So our project team for this is a company called SKIO. They're the originators of the walkable watershed concept. They started doing this in 2011. And then Hirschman Water and Environment, who is a one-man show out of Charlottesville. SKIO and Hirschman and myself have actually worked together on walkable watersheds at several different places in the Bay. And then unique to this project, we are engaging Defensores de la Cuenca, which I'll talk about several times, but they are conducting all of our Latino outreach for this project. And then the port towns, as I said, Bladensburg, Colmar Manor, Cottage City, and Evanston. And then we have an assortment of other entities that are working either in the port town specifically or throughout the Anacostia River watershed. So folks like the Anacostia Riverkeeper, Anacostia Trail Heritage Area, the Neighborhood Design Center, the Low Impact Design Center, and a whole bunch of other folks. As I said, this concept was started by SKIO in 2011. The very first walkable watershed project took place in the city of Richmond. I worked on that project. It started with a very small group of partners and residents in a very underserved community, food desert, no transportation, no grocery stores, nothing. And it was a very small network of folks that started it. And it has grown intensely over the past decade. And the plan that was developed through that project is still being used. It's really provided a roadmap, which is really important. This whole project is funded through the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation through a small watershed grant. Important to note that because it is NIFWIF funded, it does have to have stormwater as the driving force behind it. So everything that we're thinking about relates to stormwater in some capacity. And the whole idea is we will crosswalk existing plans to identify opportunities for greening. So maybe if a community has plans to put in new sidewalks, but they haven't thought about how to make those sidewalks green, how can we make them green? How can we green the things that are already happening? Identifying goals, needs, and priorities from the town perspective. And then, as I said, identifying what the community sees as wants and needs, and to learn about issues from their perspective. So talking to them about how are the students walking to school, where are they walking through fields versus sidewalks versus along the road, what are the destinations that they're trying to get to, where are there things like lacking sidewalks or sidewalks that flood or other flood-prone areas, amenities that are lacking or places there could be amenities, things like that. And then combining all of the information that comes from the towns as well as the information that comes from the communities to develop one comprehensive plan for all 4 of the towns. So this plan will identify a whole suite of projects, varying from things that are very small that a town like Edmonton can do on their own, to things that are larger where they may need a partner like us, to things that are really large that might involve partnership with folks like DOT and other things. And also hopefully projects that cross municipal boundaries so towns can work together on things. And then at the end of this planning process, we are going to be installing one stormwater management project that everyone agrees upon. There was a question in the back.
Yes, ma'am. And you said that's only though in the port towns, that's not anywhere else.
This project is specific to the port towns, yes. So our basic project approach for this, we're just getting started with it. It's a 2-year project. And just to give you an idea of the amount of effort going into this, it's a 2-year, $500,000 project that we're embarking on. There's 3 main committees that we have formed. We formed a steering committee, which is essentially town administrators, mayors, other town, head of DPW, things like that, from each of the port towns. And then we're forming 2 stakeholder groups. One is what we're calling a residential stakeholder group. So that's the people who live and work in those communities, as well as church leaders, teachers, business owners, anybody that lives or works in one of these 4 towns. The second stakeholder group that we're forming, we're calling more the service provider stakeholder group. And so those are people that have more of an environmental lens on things. So that's where folks like the Anacostia Riverkeeper comes into play, Anacostia Watershed Society, the town engineer. And so those people will give us a different perspective on environmental needs. But also an important role of that group is really for them to talk to each other so we have a better understanding of who all is working in these spaces and the work that they are doing. So that again, we can be collaborative and value add and not duplicative of efforts that are already happening. What we're doing is we're compiling info from the towns. And that's like plans for things that they want to do, plans for things that they're doing, grants that they have funded, safe routes to school projects, all sorts of things like that. We've toured all 4 of the towns with the municipal leaders to talk about, oh, here's where it floods, here's where we're putting in a green street, all of those sorts of things. And our next step will be to have 2 sets of community meetings. We'll be doing meetings for Bladensburg and Edmonston together because they're next to each other on one side of the river, and Colmar Manor and Cottage City together because they are next to each other on the other side of the river. And during those meetings, that's the opportunity for the community to come to talk to us about their needs and wants and issues. We'll do a lot of marking up on maps of like, here's how I walk to get to here, here's where it floods, here's where there's this field that could be a beautiful park, things like that. So that'll be the first meeting. We'll take all of that information back, combined with the information from the towns, we'll form draft recommendations. We'll have a second round of meetings where we present those recommendations, get additional feedback from the community. We're also having stakeholder calls to do essentially the same thing. The other thing about the stakeholder group specifically is they will review the draft plan before it goes out. And then this last one, simultaneous Latino engagement. This is really important and unique to this project. The port towns collectively have the largest Latino population in all of Prince George's County. In these 4 towns, it's upwards of 50% at least in all of them. So we also recognize the fact that engaging that community takes a different set of competencies than we typically have. And so we have engaged the assistance of defensores to lead that because it's really important that we are getting the same information out of the Spanish-speaking community that we are getting out of the English-speaking community. And we recognize the fact that having a community meeting where we ask people to come and mark up a map is not going to work with that population. And so everything that we are doing in the English-speaking community, Abel and his team will be doing with the Latino community in just a very different way so that we have comprehensive information coming from everybody that lives in these towns. So where are we now? We have met with and toured all of the towns. We're in the process of crosswalking plans and completing the initial mapping. That's what you see here on the bottom is a snippet of one of the maps that we're working on that shows things that we've learned from our tours. We're finalizing the stakeholder groups, and we are on track to hold our first set of community meetings in late October. So this is still very early stages of this project, but we wanted to give you an idea of something that is large scale and cross community that we're working on locally. Any questions about that? Yes.
I'm sorry if I missed this, but I'm just curious, like, what the ultimate outcome is for the project?
For this project, we're gonna be developing one plan that will identify a whole suite of projects for each of the towns. So that then ultimately the towns can use that plan as a roadmap for environmental projects that they need to do or want to do and potential partners and sources of funding for it. So it gives you an opportunity to, like, when a grant opportunity presents itself, to say, oh, hey, this will be a good fit for this project, and we already know who our potential partners could be. So it gives you a leg up in that sort of process. Yeah.
So basically, oops, sorry. So basically you're doing a lot of community engagement to make sure that the project that is designed has the support of the community.
Yes.
And all of the materials that you are developing can be used to develop a proposal. So it's not money wasted. It's not, at the end goal is not just a design,
Correct.
but the end goal is to help the community to decide what the community wants, so that when the opportunity to obtain funding appears, that they will be prepared to do that.
They will have already, anybody who writes a grant knows that when the opportunity drops, the first question is, do we have a project and does the project fit, right? So at the end of this, these 4 towns will have a list of projects that they know will already fit what those opportunities are. Then it's just a matter of moving forward, because you won't be starting at ground zero and saying, well, we could do this or we could do this, but if we do this, and who are our partners gonna be? And then you have to do all of the stuff before you can even start writing. So when this plan is done, Rod will be able to look at the plan for Edmonston and say, this project is a great fit for this source of funding that's now available. And we already know that these are 3 partners that are interested in working on it with us, so that you can get right to writing instead of spending half of your open period identifying your partners and figuring out how you're gonna get it done.
And
It's a planning tool for planning.
the total cost of this technical assistance is?
So the towns are paying nothing for it because we partner, so this is a case of where we partnered with the towns on a grant proposal. The Environmental Finance Center wrote the proposal. We were the primary applicant. We are the recipient of the funds. So that grant is paying for us to work for the towns, basically. So we got $500,000, a lot of which is going to our partners, to basically work for the town. So the towns hired us for free. The towns hired us on Midwest dollar, basically, is what happened. So it's a $500,000 project, including implementation.
Okay, that's a great deal for the towns. I would suspect that the town managers will say.
I was gonna say, we have 5 minutes left, so I think we should bring up, our partners. So do you wanna give a quick?
I thought we went to 3:30. Is it 3:15?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, Rod, why don't you,
But you can go to.
sorry, I thought we had till 3:30.
I'll jump in and follow that with Michelle. We absolutely think the Finance Center is an amazing organization that helps our community, because we're 1,561 residents. We have a staff of 2 administrative people, the town clerk and myself. And so the ability to do this, to get prepped for that grant, and I'm the grant writer and the grant administrator and all of those great things, is just, I can't say enough about how important that is for a small community. And Colmer Manor's the same way, Cottage City's the same way, and Bladensburg, while they're a little bit bigger and they have a little more staffing, it works the same situation. So in this grant, we're impacting the 4 towns' population is about 15,000 people. And in our community, we have 273 homes, and we're a flood prone, and there's Greg from Colmer Manor. And so we're a flood-prone community, and identifying water projects that can do and help us to keep that from happening, just like my colleague's going to talk about for North Brentwood, is vital to us. And the county owns our storm drain system. The Corps of Engineers has the levee between, and the Department of Public Works for Prince George's County runs and owns our pumping station that protects us from a flood. So this project is to us is when Michelle brought the port towns together. And the port towns, by the way, work together on a number of projects. This isn't just the only one that they do. We formed a group, coalition of the port towns a number of years ago, and we just continue to work together on a lot of different things. But the Finance Center has helped us in a lot of areas, and I'm going fast because I know I want to give enough time for this wonderful person to come up and talk about projects. But we have almost 50 rain gardens in our community. We have been innovative with permeable pavement on our green streets. You can see the green streets on there. But we also did a demo project with permeable gutter, 400 feet. We've had partnerships with the Chesapeake Bay Trust, with Prince George's County Stormwater Management, with any person or organization we can find that we can get funding from. We're in the middle of right now a USDA grant to do food composting door to door. We're a green community. Edmonston has been known for that. We probably built the first green street in Maryland on Decatur Street, our main street. And so green, and we're in the Anacostia watershed and the Chesapeake Bay, of course, and that's vitally important that we try to clean and we educate. Our community is 60% Latino, so Defense de la Quinta is one of our major partners. They help us with outreach, just like these folks. If we didn't have these folks to be able to have that, to help us with that outreach, we wouldn't get that accomplished, so that we know what those people want to have done in their backyard, what they need to make it work for them. And so the Environmental Finance Center is vitally important for that. We're in the Sustainable Maryland program. Just being in that program, we have 10 criteria that we have to do each certification round every 3 years. And in that, each of those, whether that ranges from community-based food to energy to greenhouse gas to climate, whatever it might be, there's a number of activities that we have to do in that group. It's really forced the community to come together. Our green team is probably our most active group of folks. They make my hair hurt even though I don't have hair, when they get together, because they have lots of great ideas about what they can do, the tree canopy, what needs to be done with the tree canopy, what about the flooding, what about this. So it's a great group of people. They help you, you call them up, they're there for you. They put out the grant information. This grant's available, this is when it's due. They'll help you with it. So I can't say enough great things. They've helped us with our website. We have edmontonsustainability.com. One of the folks from the Environmental Center helped us develop it, design it, put all kinds of resources on it. They did a pet waste program for Prince George's County demonstration project. It just kept growing. Each of the communities were assisted with getting pet waste stations installed in our community. So for us, I can't say enough great things about Michelle and Natalia and Mike and all the crew at EFC. We couldn't get along and couldn't accomplish what we do in water infrastructure, stormwater, without their assistance.
And I would say if there's anyone in the room from a town, if you want to talk to somebody about like what partnership means and how to partner and how to take advantage of all the different opportunities that are out there, this is your man, because I think that Edmonston does, compared to some other places, that you do the best job of taking advantage of all the opportunities that are presented to you, whether they're through us or through someone else. And I think you have a lot to teach people about how that can be beneficial. So if you have questions about partnering, please talk to Rod.
Jackie, I know, I want to give you a few minutes. I'm sorry, we're running just a few minutes over.
Well, I will be real quick.
Thank you.
So I've worked with the Environmental Finance Center for many years. I worked with them before they wanted to work with me. I kind of found them through Region 7. I was in Region 7 talking to somebody, and they said, well, you have an environmental finance center right there at the University of Maryland. I wear a lot of hats. I've worn a lot of hats. I've been an elected official. I've been a mayor. I worked with the Environmental Finance Center to get some of my projects done through them. I have been an executive director for the Maryland Black Mayors. When I wanted to do the MOST program because I'm a watershed steward, and I felt that one of the things that I needed to do was ensure that our elected officials were trained to know what stormwater was, because most of them don't know. I was going to write this grant with the Chesapeake Bay Trust. We got it done through the Environmental Finance Center. They helped do the training for all of our mayors that were elected officials. They helped us from the training part to letting them know where the money was. So when somebody said about NGOs, the Maryland Black Mayors is a nonprofit organization. They helped us. When we wanted to go to the second phase, I wrote a grant with the National Fish and Wildlife, and then found out that because we were so small, because I was the only employee, we could not do it. So I went back to the Environmental Finance Center, and they helped take the grant through the University of Maryland so that we could be able to do this. And we had 5 towns, 6 towns that benefited from being able to get the citizens involved to put some stormwater best management practices in those towns. So the Environmental Finance Center, I mean, I've worked with the state of Maryland, all of the things that Rod was talking about, I've worked with them. I am currently a town manager for, I'm a certified town manager, so I've been a town manager for several different towns. You always have this toolbox. They're in my toolbox. And I call them. And if they can't help me, then they can direct me to someplace else that can help me. So all I can say is get their information, give them a call. If you have something that you need, if they can't help you, they can direct you to where you need to be and do the help that you need. Because whether you're a local government, whether you're just a community, what do you call it, HOA?
Yeah.
Or whether you are a nonprofit organization, they can either help you, they can figure out how you can get that funding done, or they can connect you with somebody else. And I'm telling you, because I've had literally hundreds of thousands of dollars that they have helped me be able to get for the different organizations and communities that I've worked with.
And I'll say, in addition to being great at taking advantage of partnerships, if you have questions about educating your community leaders, your town managers, your mayors and things like that, Jackie has a lot of experience with that, and she's a great person to talk to about that. So if you have interest in how do we educate our leaders and decision makers about things, she's the person to talk to.
Can I do a slight plug real quick though? Natalia is going to leave here and follow me to Eagle Harbor, which is one of the towns that I work with. And I have been working with a grant from the Chesapeake Bay Trust for the money came from the Prince George County Stormwater. And so one of the ideals that I had was I wanted to be able to share all of the things that we have done with the world. So we didn't do professionally like they did, because I have no idea what I'm doing. I just know what I'm doing and I get people to do it. So we have 6 workshops that we have done since June. And we are going to put them on YouTube. And it's called Eagle Harbor, Maryland Stormwater. And we have our own channel, and all 6 of these workshops are going to be there. Natalia's going to do, one, I think it's workshop number 5. But we have workshops about climate change. We have workshops about the project that they're doing. So it's going to be all go online, the 30th of September.
What's it called again?
It's the Eagle Harbor channel on YouTube, and it's a stormwater. And any of those words will take you to our channel, but it's the Eagle Harbor stormwater workshop. And we have our own channel, so you'll be able to find us. So, if you don't have anything to do one Saturday and you want to know something, go and look at one of our workshops.
Could I just say that Chesapeake Bay Trust people are going to be in this room for the next session.
Okay, and so you can ask them about me.
Thank you, everyone. I have business cards up front, and here's our contact info.
Take a card.
If you have additional questions, we'll hang around if you have things you want to ask us.
Hi, I'm Robin Lewis. I'm with Interfaith Power Line. I work with and I've known about it, but I never met them. So I've lived in Prince George and Suitland, now we moved up to Bowie, but lived in right up Branch Avenue. Past 34. Everybody comes down your way. You're down south, 15, you're down south, right? Yeah, right. So I wanted to connect with you because I've worked with a lot of
For the rest of the entities.
no, just all the connection, we just had a safe breakfast. I wish I had known, I would have liked you, but we had Reverend People Brown, this was Black Church was big network.
You're welcome. And if you email us, we can tell you,
So
we can get you
I just
contact
wanted to before,
Region 6 and 7.
so can I get your email? So I can connect with you?
Let's see, there's one in here.
Thank you, Brad.
So you're all.
Hi.
This is our greatest.
And what do you do in this?